Let's freaking go. Let's talk about Chris Hilton and a stat called yards per route run. All right. So this is an advanced analytic and it's pretty simple. How many receiving yards do you gain divided by the amount of times you run a route? So not when you are targeted, how many times you're on the field and you're running a route. And yards per route run is an efficiency stat. Whenever you break down the essence of yards per route run, it means when you are on the field at any point in time, how efficient are you when or even when not the football is thrown your way. And normally, the best yard per route run wide receivers are the best receivers, right? Malik Neighbors was a yard per route run monster. Now, as you could see, Chris Hilton last year was the 10th best SEC wide receiver in yards per route run, ahead of Alabama's Ryan Williams. Now, it is important to point out that this is adjusted for only players who had 20 targets. Chris Hilton had exactly 20 targets. So he is on the low end of this data. So his yard per route run number probably wouldn't have been this high had he been just a little bit healthier this past season. But it is of note that he was that unbelievably explosive when he played. You could also see over here that his 26.7 average depth of target is ridiculous. It kills everyone. In fact, there really isn't anyone close to his average depth of target at 26.7. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing because that number would go down, obviously, if you have played more, because they would have run him on more slants and screens and whatnot if you would have played more. But that is still a very high number. You would obviously like that number to be more in the teens. Obviously, ADOT is not a bad stat, but this is a clear example of the data size not being big enough. But the yard per route run number is, to me, something, right? Now, why is that relevant? Well, let's go back to 2022, all right? This was the yard per route run numbers of a few recent NFL draft picks that ended up being really good rookies, all right? So you could see Malik Neighbors in his first season as a full-time player had a slightly worse yard per route run than Chris Hilton. Now, obviously, he was a way better player than Chris Hilton, and I doubt Chris Hilton will get to Malik Neighbors' level, but 2.46, right? Chris Hilton was in the 2.5s. And then you go to a guy like Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, one of the best rookie wide receivers in recent memory. He was just overshadowed by Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors. He had a 2.16 yard per route run. And then obviously in 2023, both of them blew up, and both of them were essentially first-round picks. Now, what about Brian Thomas? Well, you can see Brian Thomas had a 1.36 yard per route run number. That number should have been a little bit higher. He was open quite a bit, and I think him and Jaden did not have the same chemistry in that first season. But you can see he also had double the amount of targets. So it's not a be-all, end-all that you have a high yard per route run number, but it is something, all right? It is something. And you look at a guy like Aaron Anderson, even though he was a slot receiver and a more intermediate target, his yard per route run numbers were also in the 2+. So I just wanted to share that because obviously Chris Hilton's production was very back-weighted. He only played 6 games last year, and a lot of those numbers came versus teams that weren't really all there in Oklahoma and Baylor. But with all of that said, he is an explosive weapon. Now, obviously, you need to factor in health. You also need to factor in, could he become a more intermediate player? At this juncture, he is only really a deep option. Now, there was something that I liked a lot on tape, the Baylor game. He did take a slant and was able to break a few tackles. He is a guy that does on jump balls tend to jump a little too early. He also had a very low drop grade. And on top of that, he does go to the ground a little easy. He does lose his feet a little too easy. You could see that not only, at LSU, but you could see that some in high school as well. But he is a top 100 recruit going into year 5. If he is indeed fully healthy, he has the highest ceiling on this team at wide receiver in my mind. But I don't think he'll be LSU's best receiver. I still believe that will be Aaron Anderson. And obviously you have Barian Brown, who has been a more productive version of who we think Chris Hilton can be. And they both have somewhat similar weaknesses. Now, to me, when it comes to drops, Chris Hilton has had more drops. Barian Brown has had fumble issues in his past. But the truth remains the same. As I dove deep and looked at some of Chris Hilton's tape from last year and looked at some of his numbers and talked to people at LSU today about Chris's development, this could go nuclear. It very well could go nuclear because recruiting services have mostly been better over the past 5 years at ranking the wide receivers. Chris Hilton had a way higher recruiting ranking than a guy like Malik Neighbors, and he was slightly higher ranked than Brian Thomas Jr. Now, I don't think he's going to be that good. I just don't see that happening. But could it? Yes. A lot of the peripherals look pretty good. All right. It really, really, really does look good. Now, we do have a very special guest coming up. He is my classmate, and he is one of the best sports reporters in all of Louisiana. So you don't want to miss him. He was in Omaha, Nebraska. He's going to break down his experiences there, and his name is Seth Lewis. You're going to love him. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the LSU run game. There was an interesting clip that I watched a little bit earlier today, and I have had my qualms about this guy in the past. His name is J.D. Pickle, all right? I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Here's what he had to say earlier about the LSU run game.
Than it was last year. They were told, there's no shot the run game is as bad as it was a year ago, right? It can't be worse than it was last year. There were times where it felt like LSU was just like, we can't run the football because of who we have in the backfield. Let's throw this thing. Caden Durham going into his sophomore year, I'm really excited to see what he can be when he stays healthy. Because when he was healthy last year, he was a dog for them, right? He became their go-to back when they were really rolling and when he was able to be at full strength. The other part of this, in addition to the run game, I don't think your wide receiver room takes any sort of step back from last year to this year. Aaron Anderson, he's back. Y'all, Barian Brown, one of the most, I think, underrated transfers of this entire cycle, averaged 12 yards a catch his entire time at Kentucky, and that's without a true quarterback to call a spade there. Barian Brown, Nick Anderson, Aaron Anderson, like they're going to be in real good shape, I think, to run it up and score a lot of points there with Garrett Nussmeier running the show. So the confidence, the pieces around him, another year in the system, the mental side of it, all of it for Garrett Nussmeier, I think it makes for him being in a tremendous spot here at 2025. And I think, again, it makes for LSU, I believe, being in Atlanta for the SEC championship first weekend of December.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, here's my problem with that analysis. Maybe I missed it. Let's do the clip twice. All right. For you to have a good run game, got to have a good offensive line. What does LSU's offensive line look like next year? We still don't know what the actual lineup will look like. But more importantly, I mentioned this a few times when I was in New York. I got to see a really good Michael Jackson production. It was a Broadway play breaking down Michael Jackson's life. And one thing that was always very underrated about MJ was he was such an electric dancer and performer that you would miss out on all the crazy background dancers that he had in all of his shows, from the Super Bowl to the music videos. And it wasn't just that the dancers themselves were really, really, really good. It's that the choreography was really good. The moves made sense. They weren't just dance moves because they were dance moves. You take a look at Thriller. Thriller featured dance moves that you would obviously associate with Thriller and werewolves, the kind of scary thing, right? So that is kind of a two-pronged analogy of what LSU's run game needs to look like next year. Number one, do you have the personnel to actually run the football? But number two, is the choreography correct? Are you a team in lockstep? Because the timing of your run game is very important. If you're going to be a counter team, your choreography really does matter, right? When it comes to pulling and blocking down and everything working the way it should. And then if you want to be a zone team, that also very much matters. So it is very fascinating when you hear a bunch of the national analysts break down LSU and how high they are on Garrett Nussmeier and how high they are on Barry and Brown, Nick Anderson, Chris, Aaron, and so on and so on. Bauer Sharp, Trades Green. But I do think the national analysts are overlooking these big questions surrounding the LSU offensive line. And that's okay, right? Offensive line is a position that is the hardest to break down as a national analyst because you really got to look at PFF. You really got to actually listen to the local guys that cover the team every day. Because, look, I have a good idea of who the guys are going to be at Alabama. I can't really name their offensive line right now. It's really hard to do that, right? So if you're going to say the LSU run game is going to be really good next year, well, it is very important for you to also include, how do you feel the loss of Will Campbell's going? How's that going to work out? And oh yeah, Garrett Dellinger, Miles Frazier, and Emory Jones. It's very, very, very important to factor that in. Okay, so I'm going to be honest. I do like the fact that the national analysts are high on LSU. People that do not watch or cover LSU football every single day, like we do on this channel and on other channels. Obviously, I cover the other SEC teams, but I know we're not a bunch of Lincoln Riley fans here, but on Power Hour SEC, I'm actually doing a breakdown of the 2018 Rose Bowl. So Georgia versus Oklahoma, one of the best college football playoff games of all time. The second best college football semifinal, I do put Ohio State versus Georgia slightly ahead of that game. But I don't know. That game was truly, truly, truly spectacular. And there have been some really good semifinals. Actually, I take that back. There's not really been a whole lot of good semifinals, lots of blowouts. But the thing that was very interesting was the run game from Oklahoma in that game was so damn good. It was so, so, so good. And this was a Kirby Smart Georgia defense, which is obviously the toughest run defense pretty much every year to run on in the country. So, what really impressed me watching that Oklahoma team, and they had a lot of talent. They had CeeDee Lamb, Mark Andrews, Hollywood Brown, Baker Mayfield. And their offensive line was Cody Ford, ironically a Louisiana native, but Orlando Brown, who's playing in the NFL a long time. Basically, they had three guys on their offensive line that are still playing in the NFL now. But the timing of their run game was so good. Their counter runs were things of beauty. So there are so many layers for a good run game to work. A lot of them. Okay. So let's take a few. Our guest is actually in here a little bit early. We'll get to him here in just a moment. Last year, our O-line was full of pure pass blockers. Nothing wrong with that, but we need hybrid, more physical offensive linemen. I think a big problem was when you block for Jaden Daniels for 2 years and then going to Garrett Nussmeier, who actually is a really pocket mobile quarterback, not a mobile quarterback, obviously, but it is such a juxtaposition. And also you factor in your change in the play caller and you don't have Malik Neighbors and BTJ anymore. It obviously heavily affected LSU's run game in a major way. Let's see. Alexander says Chris Hilton is the 4th highest rated wide receiver on CFB 26. Very interesting. He also says Barra Sharp is rated higher than Green and Berrien Brown has 99 speed. Jelani Watkins has 98 speed. Yeah, it's stupid. Jelani Watkins should have 99 speed. There might be 2 or 3 college football players faster than him. But then again, what's his role on the team going to be next year? It's not like that big of a deal to me. One thing about the video game that they did get right is they did have LSU as the toughest place to play. Last year, it was kind of iffy. This year, they got it right. LSU is the toughest place to play in college football. It's very subjective, obviously. I've been to many a great SEC venues. All right. So, because our guest is early, we're going to get to him right after this quick break. What was the actual Omaha experience like from the eyes of a man who has covered Super Bowls, Final Fours? Was there something different about this LSU team? I think there was, but I actually want to talk to someone who is boots on the ground.
Let's go!
On a journey together with Zion Imaging. I want you to see this experience up close. And me as a wedding and event DJ, I watched how everybody had so much fun with Zion Imaging. And a big reason for their success is the team. Yes, Jaron Thomas and his family started this off as a passion project, and they have one simple goal in mind: taking your event to the next level. Whether it's a wedding, reunion, quinceañera, school, or corporate event, Zion Imaging is all about family-friendly fun. And I gotta show you on this tour the high-level technology that quickly sends your video session to your phone, whether it's iPhone or Android. Yes, it's the Zion Imaging 360 spin booth experience, serving North Texas, North Louisiana, South Arkansas, Orlando, and more. Give us a call, 318-469-4265. Check us out on Facebook or book us at Zion Imaging, XYANimaging.com. Are you a die-hard LSU fan, and would you like to understand the complex game of football better? Well, sign up today for our PHL Patreon. This is his second touchdown, counter G while you're pulling the guard. We dive deep on recruiting and the transfer portal at a level that you have never seen before. Film breakdowns from so many different angles, and my personal favorites, oh yeah, the analytics, baby. I like to get nerdy. We take a look at cutting-edge statistics that help all of us understand LSU football even better. And guess what? Every new sign-up gets a Joe Burrow card in the mail for free. But we got to save the best for last. Our private Discord community of LSU fans from around the globe. Sign up today. Patreon.com/LSU football and put your name on our wall of patrons. Special thanks to everybody who's on here. Let's freaking go. Give him a follow at Seth Lewis INC. He was boots on the ground in Omaha, Nebraska. Seth, what was your biggest takeaway from being there?
Well, for one, thank you for having me. I've been knowing Carter, the power, for forever, right? I mean, we go back. What is this now? This is close to 2 decades.
Yeah, it's weird.
Now that we've known each other since going to LSU together, man. So this is cool. This is cool sharing this space with you. Man, I think for anybody that hasn't been to Omaha, my suggestion would be you have to do it at least once. You know, it should be one of those like sports bucket list. And for an LSU fan, it's a no-brainer. I've met so many fans that have come up maybe just for like the first 4 or 5 days, or maybe they just come up for the championship series. Because if you're out there the entire time, that is a very expensive trip. You know what I mean? And you don't know, it's the wildest trip of all of the sports trips. Because like when we cover the Saints, you know, we'll fly up Saturday and we leave on Monday after covering the game on Sunday. If you're covering the NCAA tournament, no matter what round it is, if it's the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, like it's been for LSU the last couple of years, it's like you get there, if they play on Saturday, you may get there Thursday or Friday, and then you leave on Tuesday. But you know, like, hey, if they win, you're going to leave on this day. You could leave in 4 days or like 12 days in Omaha. Yeah. It's kind of a wild deal. But no matter if it's for 4 days or for the entire trip, you should experience it because it's like a major league event on the college level. Like the way that Omaha and the town treats the players and the teams, they feel like rock stars. They feel like superstars. And obviously they are, but I mean, like, this is it feels so big. And I think Jay Johnson has said it before, but for so many of these guys, unless you make it to the World Series, unless you play for a championship in Major League Baseball, you will never be on a bigger stage per se than that. And that's the truth.
What did this team look like to you? Because, look, I mean, you've covered everything. There's not really a sport, maybe outside of European soccer, on a major scale that you've not done. What did that team look like to you behind the scenes?
Well, to me, for one, I was just so impressed with how they were able to win in so many different ways. Like, you just couldn't put them into a box, especially like late in the season. And that's what you want, right? Like you want to be able to win a game that is 1-0, 2-0. You want to be able to win games that maybe you have to score double-digit runs. Like this wasn't, you use the 2023 team, for example. That 2023 team was powered by so much power. This team did not have the same long ball power that team in 2023 did, but they still found ways to manufacture runs. And no one is saying that there was a player on this team that was maybe as good as Paul Skeens, right? Wow. And yet the way that they were able to put things together, like there was no better 1-2 duo pitching wise than Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson in the country. And that was for the entire year, right? And that was their superpower. Like you can talk about anything else, but if LSU was going to win a championship, 9.5 times out of 10, it was going to be because Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson delivered the way that they have the entire season for LSU. And that proved to be true on top of the defense. Obviously, the defense is another one that deserves just as much credit, being as good as they were, especially in the infield the entire season. And then the other things just came into form. Your bullpen came into form. Being able to, they scored so many runs with 2 outs, right, in Omaha. Like those things coming into form. But if they were going to win a championship, it was going to be because Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson were as consistent as they were the entire season, and because your defense was going to show up with their glove every single night, no matter what's happening at the plate.
Someone thought you were Carl the Cat. I don't really see it. Have you been?
Shout out to Carl, man. Shout out to Carl. I'm wearing my glasses today because I ain't gonna lie. When you're out there for like 10, 11 days, you're exhausted. You want to give everything a break, including my eyes. Yeah. But shout out to Carl the Cat, man. That's all good.
Yeah, I love Carl the Cat.
I love Carl, man.
Yeah. What's the biggest difference covering an NFL team and a college team?
The biggest difference between an NFL team and a college team is probably access. You get more. I mean, you're going in the locker room in the NFL. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Sunday, obviously, you're in there after a game. Monday, they're talking following the game. Sometimes it's an open locker room. Sometimes Sometimes the open locker room, sometimes they bring a couple guys to the podium. But I mean, like, it's just, whereas with LSU, it's just that whoever they decide to bring, even after a game, it might be, 3 or 4 guys. You're going to talk to the quarterback typically, and then you're going to maybe talk to a couple other guys. But it's kind of at the discretion, which makes sense. We are talking about like college kids versus like professionals. But yeah, I would say like that's probably one of the biggest differences between covering a college team and covering a pro team is the access. And then like the other differences are the kind of the same things that I think even as a fan, if you're a fan of the Saints in LSU, like a loss for LSU means more than a loss for the Saints, but that's because like you could be out of the playoffs with 2 losses, right?
Right.
You're most likely out of the playoffs with 3 losses. Whereas in the NFL, if you have 3 losses, you're the number 1 seed. You know what I mean? And so I think those are like some of the biggest differences when it comes to covering college. Let's just use college football versus like pro football.
Which fans do you think are more ruthless? Because I feel like you're perfect to answer this because you're New Orleans through and through, but you went to LSU, covered LSU, and you're now an objective reporter.
Absolutely.
So I feel like you're just the perfect person because you know both fan bases, but
Right.
you also have to try and look at it neutrally. So which Saints fans or LSU fans, who's more ruthless?
So LSU fans are more ruthless, but Saints fans are more petty. Saints fans are petty, man. Like they Saints fans are some of the funny, and they can be petty toward themselves. You know what I mean? Like, so that's to me, that's a good quality. It's not just all like going towards an opponent, but like 28-3 will be a number that will be celebrated forever in New Orleans, even after the Falcons possibly win a first championship. I still think people are gonna bring up 28-3, and they can try to bring up Atlanta can try to bring up a no call, but Saints fans just like kiss the ring. Yeah. Even if it is dusty at this point, it don't matter if it's dusty. Kiss it with the dust, So like to me, Saints fans are petty. LSU fans can be ruthless, but can we curse?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm not about to say nothing crazy, but when I describe LSU fans, I always describe them as the most lovable assholes in the country. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I say that because I'm like, you could go to an LSU football game, right? And people could pass a tailgate, and the fans may tiger bait someone, right? Like they may try to get on them, right? But 5 seconds later, they'll ask them, like, hey, you good? You need anything to eat? You need anything to drink? They will invite them into their tailgate to like have a good time. And like, hey, look, I know we're gonna kick your butt in about 3 hours, but man, we want to make sure that you're nourished. We want to make sure that you're well fed, that you have a lot to drink. And that's always what I've seen. Every fan base has outliers. I know people bring up, LSU fans maybe sometimes going over the line. Every fan base has fans that go over the line. And a lot of times when I've seen that in person, I've seen other LSU fans try to correct the person that is out of line. And so, like, to me, that's what I love about LSU fans is that they are the most lovable assholes in the world. And and there's just this Louisiana spirit and this Louisiana hospitality that just does not leave LSU fans. And it's probably a credit to a lot of fan bases in Louisiana, but like I've noticed it the most with LSU.
Yeah, so you've not many people could say this, but you've done local TV basically in all the metropolises, right? So
yeah, so I have done local TV in Lake Charles, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. I call myself the I-10 Thanos, and if I snap my finger, South Louisiana goes in half. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know anybody else that has that on their bingo card. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing per se.
That's a great thing, man.
I mean, it's a great thing for me. Like usually you don't do all 4 because you like kind of you skip one or you know what I mean. But I have had the blessing and the privilege to be in every television market in South Louisiana, and it's been awesome. Like I know all of those towns, and I can anytime somebody's in Lake Charles, I can give them suggestions. Anytime somebody's in Lafayette, I can give them suggestions. My family moved to Opelousas after Katrina, so Opelousas is still my second home. I've always been number 1, But Opelousas, shout out to mamas. I know how much you love mamas.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes.
but no, I consider it such a blessing working in all four markets and really knowing all four of those towns intimately. And I genuinely mean it when I say some people work places and they don't like it. I genuinely enjoy my time in like all four of those cities.
Yeah, I want to ask a few more questions that are unique from your perspective. So you've been in all four of the big four cities in South Louisiana, but I used to be this way. But you've always been this way. You're NBA over everything else, correct? That's your number one thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty even. You know what I mean? I
Right.
think it's
But
even.
personally, you grew up a huge NBA.
Yeah. Now, personally, the way I got into sports was the NBA and
Okay.
was the Hornets. I remember like for a Halloween party, you borrowing like a Chris Paul jersey. One
Yeah, I
time.
did. Yeah.
That's how far back we go for sure.
Right, right. So you love the NBA.
Yeah.
Do you think South Louisiana loves the NBA?
No.
No.
No, I don't. I don't think that
No.
South Louisiana loves the NBA. I think the people that love it love it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I think there's a nice number of Pelican fans. I know people joked about the Pelican 12 and like they kind of embrace that. Obviously, it's so much more than that. There is a nice number, and when the Pelicans win, people show up. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
like those crowds are rocking. It's not pumped in noise. Like it's legitimately, 18,000 people screaming at their lungs, man. Like people in South Louisiana, like they will get behind a winner, even if it's not necessarily, their favorite sport or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, it's just, it's kind of hard to say that, people in South Louisiana love basketball because just as time is going on and whenever the team isn't doing that well, the crowds the
Yeah.
crowds dwindle. I mean, there was a lot of games. The Pelicans were bad at the beginning of the season, so there was a lot of games on that you could go online and get yourself a $2 ticket.
Yeah. So
It costs more to park at games than it did to go into the games for the majority of the season. So that you wish that was better. I certainly wish that was better because I am a huge NBA fan and I can probably talk NBA and basketball better than any sport, even football, which I can still talk. I can talk a lot of football. But yeah, I don't think it's a love. It's a like. Maybe it's a like,
yeah.
but it's not. It's not necessarily a love.
Unless it's like 2 hours into a live stream or towards the end of my live stream, I won't get into NBA because I know my analytics told me just don't do it. But I bring that up because, like, obviously Florida is a big NHL state because they've won so much, the Florida Panthers, if you will. So if the Pelicans were successful, it'd be, a bigger basketball state. But with that said, take Kim Mulkey and obviously what LSU women's basketball has done out of the equation. Literally, when I talk LSU men's basketball, nobody cares. Mm-hmm. When I talk Pelicans, nobody gives a damn. No, nobody. All right. It blows my mind. Like, and that hurts me. That really does hurt me that this sport, I grew up going to John Brady basketball camps. My dad goes to 6 Pelican games minimum a year. He lives a very long way from New Orleans. I really do care. So obviously you're an objective reporter. You can't say that you're cheering for the teams to win, but does it hurt you that Louisiana, which has such a rich basketball history, is so damn low on the totem pole of men's basketball success right now?
Yeah, but I would also say though that like when Will Wade was at LSU, I mean, the PMAC was packed. You know what I mean? Like again, like if it matters, if it's really happening, like people will come out and they will support and they will show that same passion. But there's also a reason why if LSU football season is not going well, people say, "Oh well, baseball season's in a few months." Like they just skip over like LSU fans have skipped over basketball season since I was going there. Like, oh well, at least we got LSU baseball. Like that's right, always right. The phrase. And so yeah, it hurts. I mean, it's not even about like being objective or whatever. It's just, I mean, like I like basketball, and even it's funny though, Carter, because when you look at the analytics of like NBA finals and like other like big basketball events, a lot of times New Orleans is near the top as far as like, you'll have whatever cities are involved in that event. And then like New Orleans is one of the like usually the highest like neutral places. And so that's the part that's weird. There clearly are people in New Orleans, in Louisiana, that are passionate about basketball, because you don't just show up on those lists by chance. But it just hasn't translated as far as the product is concerned. And man, I hope that the Pelicans are in New Orleans for a very long time, because I feel like at this point they're going to be known as the franchise. They would be known as the franchise if they moved to have drafted 3 quote unquote generational talents, or these amazing talents, and really saw nothing from it. Didn't even see a conference finals from it. Like, you look at the Charlotte Hornets, they've been in hell for a long time. They've been in hell for I couldn't even tell you what a part of their vision is. They need to go to Lens Crafters or something, because their vision needs to be checked. Like, I don't know what the heck they got going on. But like the Pelicans, they've drafted Anthony Davis, they've drafted Chris Paul, they've drafted Zion Williamson. Zion, obviously, part of that is injury, but like we've seen it with all of them, like how good they were. Like, this isn't just like players that were bust. Zion a year ago led this franchise to the second most wins in franchise history, obviously, since they moved to New Orleans. Like, that's not something that you can say of somebody who isn't that, like, who isn't that guy. The problem is for him, injuries, maybe some other stuff. And it just seems like with other people, it either hasn't been built that way, or like you look at Chris Paul when he was here, and you could tell that they were trying to save money at a time when they could maybe really build on momentum of a couple playoff runs, and they were selling the team, and obviously basketball reasons came into the dialect for everybody. And so it's just unfortunate, because they have had some like really great talents. They haven't been talent absent, and they've just not been able to capitalize on it. And that does suck as somebody that loves the NBA and loves the NBA in Louisiana and in New Orleans.
Brian Kelly makes you feel what when I bring him up?
I feel like Brian Kelly. I feel like Brian Kelly sometimes doesn't get enough credit. I think that's when he was first coming here from Notre Dame. I know there was a lot of mixed feelings, and I can understand it. He's not always been presented in a way that is favorable, right? And maybe for good reason and on his own doing. But since he's been here, like there have been times where he said stuff in press conference. I'm like, oh, that's funny, but like nobody's laughing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think he does, maybe not family, but he does have more personality than like people, would like to give him credit. And I think that he has a little bit been the victim of one, succeeding fast at LSU. Taking a team that had 36 scholarship players, and in the first year you lose to Florida State game 1, and then all of a sudden you're in the SEC championship. That team had no business being in the SEC championship, right? But that did end up happening with that team. The second year, there's obviously more expectation. You don't necessarily live up to that, but now all of a sudden you have a Heisman winner. So in year 1, you're in the SEC championship game. In year 2, you have a Heisman winner. Now year 3, it's like, oh man, like it really should be bubbling up. And obviously it just didn't pan out that way. Now you have to make the playoffs. Right now that this thing has expanded to 12, there's less and less excuses for LSU, because LSU, maybe they in the past haven't always been like that team will be in the top 4 every year, but LSU should be flirting with or in the top 12 just about every year. Like they should be in the top 3 or 4 teams in the SEC every year. I think that's a fair expectation. Top 4 is tough. Top 12, I think, is fair, and then they can make a run because of the amount of talent that's in the state of Louisiana, as well as the brand that is LSU and all that it brings in. But I do think he has become a little bit of a victim of having success too early. But now you got to cash in. It's year 4 now, so it's definitely time.
Rank these all-time players
Ooh.
in the NBA. Kevin Durant,
Uh-huh.
Steph Curry,
Uh-huh.
Nikola Jokic.
Dang. Dang. I would probably say as of right now, Jokic. It's funny. I don't know. Jokic is probably top 20 definitely at this point, with having his 3 MVPs and whatnot. But I still would probably say Steph 1, KD 2, and Jokic 3. I don't think it would. That could certainly change soon. Jokic is on a top 10 trajectory. And it's funny when you're talking about ranking, like all 3 of those players I would not have in my top 10, which I know that's a little bit controversial. I know a lot of people have stuff.
Oh, wait, all 3 of them?
No, I don't think all 3 of them. I don't believe in my top. I've done my top 10 recently.
Well, then, if you've done it recently, let's hear it.
No, it's not. It's not from. It's not 1 to 10. I will say that. Maybe it's 1 to 3.
Okay, that's
4
fine.
to 10, it kind of gets jumbled up. So 1 to me is Jordan, 2 is LeBron, 3 is Kareem. I think you can argue they're like 1A, 1C, to be honest. Like I feel like all of them have like legitimate arguments for the GOAT conversation. And then from there you have like Magic, Wilt, Kobe, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Bill Russell, and then the other person, Larry Bird. And that's my 10. And then Hakeem would be 11 to me. Hakeem Olajuwon would be 11, and then we're talking about Steph at 12. Because the thing that people say about Steph is they're like, man, Steph is the greatest shooter of all time. Well, before that happened, it was either Reggie Miller or Ray Allen, and nobody was arguing for them to be in the top 10, right? Like, so I don't feel like being the greatest shooter of all time is necessarily like an indicator of being in the top 10. And also, when you're talking about people that high, you have to nitpick. Like you have to. You're drawing straws because Steph could easily be in the top 10. KD could easily be in the top 10, but like Steph, I believe has 4 first-team All-NBAs. And when you look at like the top 10, like when you talk about the greatest players of all time, we're talking about 9, 10, 11, 12 first-team All-NBAs and things of that nature. I believe Jason Tatum now has 3 or 4 first-team All-NBAs, just for comparison, right? Nobody's putting Jason Tatum up in that area, but it's just to say, like, for somebody who's been such a dominant guard, you would expect for them to maybe have had more success than what they've had. 4 championships, great, but 2 of those came with Kevin Durant. And
that is so.
If we take that for Kevin Durant, then we got to take that for Steph too, even if he did win one after Kevin Durant.
That is such an interesting stat because I have been so Steph pilled in the top 10. But you're all right. I just looked at that. That is an alarmingly lower amount of first-team All-NBAs. Like I thought it would have been like minimum 7.
And you would think it would be, right?
Yes. So interesting.
But again, I just think it's one of those things where, again, when you're talking about judging this, right? When you're talking about top 10, top 15, those things have to come into play. Like, I don't think that Kobe is in the top 3 or maybe even in the top 5 because he has 1 MVP. You know what I mean? Like those things have to, obviously rest his soul. And but it's not, if he's the 6th or 7th greatest player of all time, that's not an insult.
No, it's not. I did not think that the gap, if you would have told me before this that Kobe would have 7 more first team All-NBAs.
I know.
Than Steph. Now Steph has 5 second teams.
Yes, that's important.
And Kobe has 2 second teams, so still that's 13 to 9. And then Kobe has all these defensive first teams.
Yes. But like Chris Paul, as I'm just looking at it, Steph and Chris Paul have the same number of first teams, same number of second teams, same number of third teams. Obviously, Steph has 2 MVPs, one that was unanimous. So and he's 4-time champion. They're not the same. But that's just to say, like, however you want to feel about Chris Paul, Chris Paul has been a top 2 guard in the NBA, according to voters. I know. But he's been a top 2 guard in the NBA as many times as Steph. And Steph is a likable player. Like, people aren't just not voting for Steph because they got some vendetta against him. Like, he's a likable guy, and he's still only been first team All NBA 4 times. You just can't. It's levels. It's just levels.
Yeah, and look, one other thing, and obviously we're both biased because this was our adolescence, but I just think Chris Paul is underrated in the all-time convos. I really do, and I understand he's my favorite. Like, of the elites outside of Shaq, he's my favorite player ever, right? I just think CP3 is very underrated, and my hottest NBA take: Chris Paul ahead of Durant.
Oh no, you crazy?
That's okay.
Yeah, listen. I was waiting. I was waiting for you to say, because I think Chris Paul. I think I would have a hot take that Chris Paul is maybe the 4th greatest point guard of all time. And I think people would argue. There's a bunch of different guys. People argue the first person that would probably come to mind is John Stockton, because he's all-time best in assists and steals. But I think that Chris Paul is the greatest floor raiser potentially of all time.
Yes.
In NBA history.
Yes.
And he is the greatest winner to not win a championship in NBA history, which is tough. It's hard to be a winner and to have not won a championship. But also, he's 6 foot, and in the history of the NBA, only 2 players, at least in the modern era, but in the modern era, there's only been 2 players that have been 6'3" and under who have been considered the best player on championship teams, and that's Steph and Isaiah Thomas. And that's why Steph is number 2, and that's why Isaiah Thomas is number 3, just behind Magic Johnson. You know what I mean? So small guards historically, that's why I never believed in the Knicks, because Jalen Brunson is their best player and he's 6'2".
They got after Becky. They got after Becky Hammond for that.
Yeah, she delivered it in a way that was tough. She had some facial expressions that was but it's the truth. Like small guards in the NBA, because down the stretch, when you're talking about creating a shot and these iconic shots that we've seen Kobe and LeBron and Jordan and all these other people make, it's just harder. That's nothing against Chris Paul. It's just a harder thing to do. It's a harder thing to close it out when you're 6 foot, 6'1". So when guys like Steph and when guys like Isaiah Thomas are able to do that, they get bonus points, because clearly they're just men amongst boys.
Yeah, I've workshopped this CP3 take so many times in my head, and I never get to share because I'm not an NBA content creator, and nobody cares about my NBA opinions. People barely care about my NFL and college football opinions.
I don't know about that one.
It's enough to pay the bills. It's enough, but here's my thing about Chris. All right, and I understand not everybody likes him because he left New Orleans and all of that stuff. But I think most New Orleans sports fans appreciate this guy. All right, I think the thing that gets underrated about him is that he played with great players. I wouldn't never say that Tyson Chandler and Blake Griffin. They're great players, but they're not legends. They're not. Chris Paul, the 3 best teammates he ever had were all at the tail end of his career, and they were all past or before their prime, and that's SGA, and obviously that was SGA's first season, and then it was Wemby this past year, and obviously Chris is not Chris anymore. And then obviously it was Steph Curry the year before. And all his prime years, his best teammate was James Harden. So and James is a great player, but not necessarily who you want to actually win the whole damn thing, So I know this turned into a Chris Paul apology.
Yeah, listen, I love Chris Paul. Chris Paul is my favorite, Hornet / Pelican of all time. I will never forget the memories from when he was here, especially that run in 2007 where they got the Spurs to a Game 7 at home, and obviously they lost. And that was tough, you know what I mean? But no, like I will never forget Chris Paul and what he contributed. And you brought up some of those guys, but it's like David West was averaging, I don't know, 8-9 points before Chris Paul, before they became teammates, and before he took his leap. You look at Tyson Chandler. Tyson Chandler was considered a bust before he got with Chris Paul. He was dealing with an older Peja Stojakovic, who had great years with the Kings before he came to the Hornets. And you also talk about Morris Peterson on those Hornets teams. Like, that team had no business being the 2 seed. And it's funny, Kobe won the MVP over Chris Paul that year.
Oh, dude, don't get me started.
I felt like Chris Paul was the MVP, but now that everybody's career is done, I do understand that decision more, because a player as great as Kobe, there was no way he could finish his career and not have an MVP.
Yeah,
and that's tough. That's that can be narrative based and all that stuff, but the truth is, Kobe was too good to not be an MVP, and they were what and what. The Lakers finished 1, the Hornets finished 2. The Hornets, to me, what Chris Paul did to elevate that group was greater than what Kobe did to elevate that group. But I just do understand that, like, Kobe is he's just too great of a dude to have not had an MVP. And now, especially, I guess some of that is in his passing. It's like, man, I am glad that he had one on his resume, because he's an MVP caliber guy.
Yeah, and the thing is, and I won't get into all these analytics I've looked up for Chris, but if you really want to go down a wormhole, Chris's efficiency numbers are a lot better than a lot of your favorite players.
Absolutely.
Like, if you ever just want to go look, because look, I am not, I know you're not like deep into it. I'm not either. Like, I can't sit here and tell you how PER works or VORP or all the WD-40, all these different things that have been made. But any one of those makes Chris look a lot better. Like, and the fact is, he was a better defender than a lot of these great offensive point guards like Lillard and Steph and those guys.
He led the league in steals multiple years. He's led the league in steals multiple years, a couple times, I believe, with the Hornets and then with the Clippers. And it's like, it's funny because, I mean, you could just go down the list of teams like where they maybe should have been versus where they ended up. Like, you talk about the Clippers. The Clippers were a joke. People don't think about the Clippers quite the same. Like, they still kind of a joke. But people don't think about them quite the same because Chris Paul went there, right? And he turned DeAndre Jordan into an all-star. He made Blake Griffin into a superstar, even though the dunk contest certainly helped that too. But, like, Lob City was a real thing. He goes to the Rockets, and the Rockets are maybe a Chris Paul hamstring away from upsetting the Warriors. And that was the Warriors with Kevin Durant.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, that is the type of impact. He gets traded to Oklahoma City for Russell Westbrook. They're trying to figure out, okay, like, should we trade this guy? You know what I mean? Because, like, we're just trying to tank. We're trying to stink. And then it was like, nah, like, let's keep him around. We just traded for SGA, right? That was SGA's, like, second year that when he was in OKC. He's like, man, let's get him around SGA. Let's get him around Schroeder at that time. And, like, let's let his influence rub off on this group. Well, then all of a sudden, OKC goes from a team that's legitimately on paper a bottom 3-4 team in the West to the 4 seed. The series that they lost in the bubble, they were the host. Now, it didn't matter because there was no crowd. But they were the 4 seed and the Rockets were the 5 seed. The team that traded him, he had put OKC record-wise to be better than the Rockets. And so you have like that. And then he goes to Phoenix. Phoenix is a joke. Let's be honest.
A joke.
Phoenix was a joke before he got there. Like, it was like, all right, when is Devin Booker going to leave? All of a sudden, we're looking at Devin Booker like Kobe 2.0, which that was probably a little crazy. But like, all of a sudden, the Suns are in the championship. And DeAndre Ayton, his number 1 pick, is all of a sudden looking really good and looking like a role. Like, every single place that he's gone up to maybe the Warriors. And, of course, his impact wasn't the same with the Warriors.
Yeah.
But up to the Warriors, every team he's gone, he's not, it's not just been like, oh, like it was a little bit of a jump. It was an elevation. You know what I mean? Like it was like, so to me, I look at those things and no, he didn't win a championship. And that's why, you have to be careful with where you put him. And I guess his career isn't over, but even if he wins the championship, it's not going to be in the same type.
Yeah, I mean, it's over when we're talking about like all-time great combo.
When we're talking about all-time great conversations, but there's just no doubt. Like I said, he to me is the greatest floor raiser in NBA history, and he is the greatest winner that at this point will walk away without a championship in NBA history. And those are great things to have. I mean, he's SGA and Wemby and Devin Booker and all these guys, as their careers continue to go on and as they continue to be great, people are going to point back to Chris Paul and say, man, he taught me how to be a professional. Man, he taught me how to have that fire. And the things that annoyed maybe the Clippers locker room with his antics, you can tell some of these young guys have liked because it's been different. It's been someone that's truly challenging them. And there's no doubt why SGA is an MVP and why Wemby will be an MVP and will take over this league in short order. Part of that is going to be because their careers intersected with Chris Paul.
I know he flirted with like kind of retirement with some of the things he recently said, but I need another Chris season. Man. I understand I'm a Chris Glazer, as the kids say nowadays, but I freaking love this human being.
You know what would be funny, and I don't know if it would happen, but I know the flirtations have happened before. It would just be cool if his career ended in New Orleans, or if he got one more year in New Orleans, because I think that a lot of fans appreciate him. I think some fans, their love for Jose, because they got into it in that series 4 years back. I think they like, man, that's my guy, so I'm riding with my guy. I respect that a lot. But I think if he was on this team, if he was on the Pelicans team, and he got a victory lap with New Orleans, I think that because he loves New Orleans, I can tell when he talks, and I can tell how much it hurt him when they were looking to sell the team. That all right, I do need to make a career change or whatever. But like I do believe it hurt him. I remember a quote many years ago when they were in Oklahoma City. Ironic that Oklahoma City wins the championship 20 years to the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, because obviously the Hornets moved to Oklahoma City for those 2 years, and that's the biggest reason why Oklahoma City ended up getting an NBA team. So there's like a lot of irony there. But I remember there was a lot of rumors about the Hornets moving to Oklahoma City permanently, and if New Orleans could manage a football team and a basketball team at the same time. And I remember a quote, and I've never been able to find it, but I remember a quote from Chris Paul saying, "We have to go back to New Orleans. That's our home." And however old I was at the time, that meant something. You know what I mean? Like that was something that the star of the team was saying, we got to go back. Those people need us, and a big reason why that Saints team that won the championship is so loved. And I believe that maybe some of those guys with the Hornets, it didn't maybe result in the same, was because they were so integral in getting into the communities and helping to rebuild the city, and not just being these stars sitting on the sideline and making appearances. Like they were legitimately on the ground trying to help and being one of instead of one above to help this city regrow. So I think if he came back for a year, it could really kind of put all of those things back into perspective, and he could really be appreciated in New Orleans the way that I think he should, because there's an argument that he should go into the Hall of Fame as a Hornet. I don't know if he would. Maybe he would go as a Clipper.
I think it's got to be a Hornet. I do. I mean, I know it's Clipper. It is strange though that he peaked both those franchises, like the best years of both those franchises. And the thing is, in the Suns. So three different teams. Obviously, some would say Barkley versus Jordan was a peak for them, but it's still basically they both got to the finals at the same time. But the thing that you get the good fortune of doing, not me as much, is you get to stand next to NBA guys pretty often, right?
You're looking up.
Yes. and I've had the good fortune of sitting low at a few NBA games. They're aliens. Dude, if you ever sit down very low next to 6'7", 6'8" guys that run 4.5s, 4.6s, the fact that a 6-foot man puppeteers all these super tall and gigantic human beings, it's so much harder to do that. And it's different than like when D Rose did it, because D Rose was like a top 1 percentile athlete, right? And Chris is very athletic, very fast, quick, all those things, but he wasn't blessed with that kind of athleticism that some other greats at that height had, like AI, if you will. And then something else I'll say about Chris. I know we went way too long on this, but you're the only person that I would trust in my circle that would love to talk Chris this long on an LSU football channel. But Chris's legacy is more so about the trades that didn't happen, right? Because there was obviously, this one's not talked about as much as the other one, but there's interest in Chris Paul being traded for Steph Curry and Klay Thompson.
Yes.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? And as much as I love Chris, it's like, dude, could you imagine Klay and Steph in New Orleans? New Orleans would be the basketball hub if that would happen. If you ever want to dive into a wormhole about that, the Warriors were valued at like $1 billion before Steph, and now they're valued at $7 billion. So that's like how valuable Steph was to that. And so you would have gotten Steph and Klay. So Chris didn't get that opportunity to go to Golden State. No telling what could have happened with him at Golden State or vice versa. But also to your point about Kobe, Chris should have been playing with Kobe, right? Kobe would have been by far the best player he ever played with in his prime. And I think it's fair to say, even though that fit would have been a little strange, they would have won at least one chip together. At least one.
At least them two dudes are just way too competitive to have not. Yeah. And I don't think Kobe, Kobe gets so much with like the hero ball deal, but like Kobe was also somebody that was like that could adapt. Like Kobe was a very adaptable player, and so I think that while he played with like Derek Fisher for most of his career, as far as a point guard is concerned, like I think Kobe would have found ways around that, and I think Chris Paul would have put Kobe in some great spots in order to be successful. And so, that would have been crazy. I wouldn't have liked it. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
It would have hurt me.
Oh, it would have hurt. It was like honestly when the rescinded happened, it's almost like when you pay for something with your credit card and then it didn't work out and then they send you your money back. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, whew, I'm glad I got my refund. Like that would have sucked. Yeah. But because you just knew what type of damage the Lakers were about to do. But yeah, his legacy is going to be tied a lot to what could have happened in some cases. The Kobe one way more than the Steph one, because even I'm like, dang, that's right. He did almost get traded. But it's also one of those what ifs, because I also feel like Steph needed the Warriors and Kerr. You know what I mean? Like he needed to be put in that type of system. He was good with Mark Jackson, don't get me wrong, but like when Steve Kerr came and they started to move the ball more, and obviously they had all of those runs are really powered by defense, even more probably than there were threes. Though the threes is what like everybody like is like amazed by. But he kind of needed that. Like he needed that system around him, and at that time he was dealing with all of the ankle injuries, and so it's like, the Hornets medical staff didn't have the greatest reputation in the world. Like is he even the same health in New Orleans that he is in Golden State? So we don't. You don't know those things. But it is crazy to think about just what could have been in New Orleans.
Yeah, and I know it's like if I ever saw Chris, I don't think I'd ever ask him about like what do you think your life would be like if you would have been a Laker, because I know that pains him.
Yeah.
But he's lived a top 1 percentile life. You
consider this the whole time. Let me think about that. Almost the entire time he was in Los Angeles, the Clippers were a better team than the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean they were what?
That's
I have to go. I have to go back and look at the
I have to
seeding.
go back and look at like the Lakers may have won a championship at the beginning of his tenure in LA, and actually I don't think so. I think by the time he got there, that was kind of I think the Lakers had won their 2 titles at that point. I could be wrong, but for the majority of the time that Chris Paul was in LA, the Clippers were the better team, and Kobe was on the backside of his career, and so like that's unbelievable. Like thinking about the Clippers and their history, that's unbelievable. This dude had to go through Donald Sterling, man. And he had to deal with he uplifted Donald Sterling. Like you know how hard that is to do.
It's crazy, and I that's something else. If we can get down into like a deep wormhole. I know I kept you too long.
No, it's all good.
Newsflash: Cooper Flag's going to be the first pick.
Yeah,
So
I'm about to say I'm not missing
if you
anything.
missed that, I know. Basically, you're diehard. You could break down Ace Bailey right now.
Probably, maybe I don't know.
Because you love the whole NBA draft, so I'll let you
Yeah,
go.
I'll probably at this point after the last 2 weeks, I could probably break down Luis Hernandez better than I could Bailey. But
I love it. But yeah, man, I appreciate you, and I will save more Pelicans hot takes for you next time you're on, buddy.
Yeah, man. Let's save the Chris Paul talk. I will leave you with this one.
Okay.
Chris Paul should be the first jersey ever retired since the team moved to the city. They have not retired a jersey. I think Pete Maravich's jersey is still up there. But this franchise, since they moved here, Chris Paul should get the honor of being the first jersey retired. His number 3 should be retired in New Orleans.
Yeah, especially now that CJ's no longer here. So there you go. All right, we'll talk soon, Seth.
Later, man.
Later, bud. Seth Lewis. Check him out, WWL. He has done media at a high level in sports local TV at all 4 stops. Okay. Same thing happened with the Josh Allen MVP year. That's a good point, Alexander. I think Josh Allen should have won the MVP 2 years ago, and I think Lamar Jackson should have won the MVP last year, but they had it flipped. But you couldn't go wrong with either. Honestly, the most valuable player in the NFL last year was Jaden Daniels. I'm not going to say he was the best; those are 2 different things. But he was the most valuable player in the NFL. Christopher says, "I hope the Pels draft you tonight, Carter." Yeah, there's been quite a few jokes about that. So for those that don't know, there is an NBA draftee tonight, and his name is Carter Bryant. I love him. I love his game too. He actually is a fun player. Played at Arizona, and super young. He will be my new favorite NBA player because my dream was always making the NBA, and obviously that did not flourish. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't see this one. Who are the Pels going to draft tonight? We'll see. That is interesting, Alexander, that Luka Doncic has as many first-team All-NBAs at 26 that Steph Curry has in his entire career. That Seth floored me with that, right? Floored my ass with that. That Steph Curry only has actually only 4 first All-NBA teams, Steph Curry. Now, he has 11 in total, but 5 seconds and 2/3. My only pushback to the All-NBA, Steph only having 4 of them, is that the guard era he played in was just totally ridiculous, right? Think about all the crazy guards. So, you're battling against Chris Paul for those slots every year. You're battling against Damian Lillard for those slots every year. You're battling, obviously I'm drawing a blank now that I brought it up. Dwayne Wade for a good chunk of those years. Steve Nash for some of those years. So yeah, I mean, I do think it is something. I did not think Kobe would have that many more first team All NBAs than Steph Curry. I would not have thought that. Where Kobe has legit 11 first All-NBA selections, first team All-NBA selections. That is, y'all, that is a ridiculously high number. I did not know that to be the case. Let's go to Donald. All right, so I have discussed this before. A lot of these awards need to be voted on by more people than just the media. A lot of the media has agendas. Okay, this is a very good topic, and here's what we're going to do. Next few minutes, I'll take as many as we possibly can. If you super chat, we'll keep it moving. Because I do want to watch the LSU baseball thing at 8. All right. Okay. Slippery slope. So let's take the Heisman Trophy that has a good mix of media, players who have won the award get to vote for it, and obviously some players that are in the media vote for it. It has a pretty good mix, and it does a first through third, and obviously the NBA MVP does a first through fifth point system. And it's tough because we just had the best MVP battle that I have ever seen between Jokic and SGA. I do think that was the best. Now I'd have to go back and look, but those were two of the strongest MVP seasons. And I can make a strong case that this Jokic season was the best season to not win an NBA MVP. But let's talk about the voting thing as far as like the media is concerned. Does the media have agendas? Yes. Does the media tend to favor players that might be a little bit nicer to them in interviews and access and all of that? Yes. Do the media members vote for guys knowing that their votes are transparent and knowing that those players can give them more access? Yes. But there is a problem, especially with the NBA, because all NBA teams, if you make them or if you don't, can have a heavy effect on your salary, sometimes up to $11 million per year, which is ridiculous. But a few things that arise is that players and former players have agendas as well, right? Like, for instance, let's say Shaquille O'Neal headed all NBA voting. Well, Shaquille O'Neal hates Dwight Howard. All right. So is it fair to Dwight Howard if Shaquille and then I'm just thinking of like the first thing. And obviously I'm not a huge Dwight Howard fan and I'm a massive Shaq. I was just trying to think of one NBA player who had animosity towards each other and they squashed their beef since then. It's always going to be tough to deciding who should vote for what. Obviously, baseball, their Hall of Fame voting is just media members. I don't agree with that. But in the grand scheme of things, I do prefer the media to vote. I do think that they are the best voters of awards. I know that goes counter to all of it because I don't know if I would consider myself a traditional journalist media per se. But I have a few reasons as to why, but I won't get into all of those. I do think one thing that does need to change, though, is weekly voting, like the AP voting in football is so stupid. The way that the AP has local media members doing the rankings is crazy to me. It is impossible to do those rankings and have them spit out as quickly as they do. And this is a good point here from Pegasus. The players this year voted Halliburton as the most overrated player in the NBA. And that was probably the wrongest opinion in the history of wrong opinions. It's up there. It's up there with Jay Johnson and Ed Orgeron are the same guy. It's up there. So there you go. That'll do it for me tonight. We'll be back live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central for PHL Live. Mr. Blake Ruffino will be our guest at 6:30 Central. Go follow Seth. Let him know you enjoyed his presence, and we'll talk to you soon. Power Hour LSU. Boom. Tonight we are doing chicken enchiladas. Let's go.